The Muslims forgot the fact that the areas which they wanted to be separated from Hindustan have always been a part of Hindustan historically, and there is no doubt in it.
Hmm. Baba, there was also a Hindu side to the whole narrative, and you have included it in your book.
Yes, of course, and it is completely true.
Baba, can you share it with our audiences?
See, Tatya, the way I have put a Muslim case for Pakistan, I have also put a separate chapter called The Hindu Case Against Pakistan. And I have also given logical reasons for it. I hope you know that.
Yes, yes, I do know that very well.
See, we are talking about the Hindu case against Pakistan, which is going to be created by cutting off a part of Hindustan. So, first of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that this is neither going to be easy nor going to be brief while sharing. There were three primary reasons why the Hindus were against the scheme of Pakistan. Firstly, because it involves the breaking up of the unity of Bharat. Secondly, because it weakens the defenses of Bharat. And lastly, because it fails to solve the communal problem. We have to realize the fact that there was no doubt that striking a blow at the idolatry and polytheism of the Hindus and establishing Islam in Bharat was also one of the aims of this scheme. No Hindu can forget that Muhammad of Ghazni looked upon all of his numerous invasions of Bharat as the waging of a holy war. He demolished idol temples and established Islam. He captured the cities, killed the polluted wretches while destroying the idolaters and gratifying Muslims. Tatya, every year he would undertake a holy war against Hind. He left not one temple standing. I would like to mention here what Taimur has explained in his memoir, What Led Him to Invade Bharat. He says, my object in the invasions of Hindustan is to lead a campaign against the infidels, to convert them to the true faith according to the command of Muhammad, to purify the land and overthrow the temples and idols. See, Tatya, what is important to bear in mind that with all their destructive conflicts, Muslims were all united by one common objective, and that was to destroy the Hindu faith. How can any Hindu forget 762 years of incessant Muslim invasions and the methods adopted by them? The first consequence of these invasions was the breaking up of the unity of northern Bharat with the rest of Bharat. Lahore, Kabul, and Kandahar. All of these regions have been a part of the ancient Bharat but were detached by Muhammad Ghazni, Muhammad Ghori, right up to Aurangzeb. Had it not been for the rise of the Sikhs, these regions would still have been detached. The methods adopted by all the Muslim invaders have left behind them their aftermath. And the most important aftermath is the bitterness between the Hindus and the Muslims. Destruction of temples, forced conversions, the spoliation of property, the human slaughter and enslavement, and humiliation of men, women, and children. If these are the memories of the Muslim invasions, how can we expect the Hindus to remain calm and accept the partition and creation of Pakistan? And if they would have accepted this partition with all the calmness which they were expected to, wouldn't it amount to only shame and nothing else on the part of the Hindus? The Muslim invaders came to Bharat singing a hymn of hate against the Hindus. Let us accept the fact that unity between Pakistan and Hindustan was always a myth and will always be so. And now I would like to highlight the weakening of defenses of Bharat factor. See, there were three factors involved: the question of frontiers or the borders, question of resources, and the question of armed forces. Let us understand that Pakistan always wanted to bring the boundary of Hindustan back to the Indus, in fact, behind the Indus up to the Satluj. According to the Simon Commission report and the data presented in it, which I have mentioned in my book in detail, it was revealed in a striking manner that the fighting forces available for the defense of Bharat mostly came from areas which were to be included in Pakistan. To put it in simple words, according to the British policy of recruitment in the Bharatiya army, it was very clear that without Pakistan, Hindustan couldn't have defended itself. Now, Tatya, on the backdrop of the above detailed discussion, how could one expect any Hindu to accept the formation of Pakistan by way of partition of Bharat? To understand this matter, I would want our audience to read the detailed composition of the British Indian Army in my book.
Baba, now that you have brought up the topic of British Indian Army, can you throw some light on the then government run by the British?
Tatya, while replying to one of your earlier questions, I have already said something related to this subject. Still, I would repeat it. From the point of view of the empire, it mattered very little to the British whether Bharat remained one undivided whole or was it partitioned into two divisions, Pakistan and Hindustan, or into 20 linguistic fragments as planned by the Indian National Congress? Why do we forget that with regard to the claim for the creation of a national Muslim state in Bengal, in 1905, Lord Curzon had already partitioned Bengal into two provinces, Eastern Bengal and Assam with Dhaka as its capital, and Western Bengal with Calcutta as its capital. But the Hindus should have always remembered that creation of Pakistan would have never left Hindustan in a weakened condition. And I think today, as we look at our Bharat from the heaven, it has been aptly proven by the existing government. This is a clear proof that the idea of Pakistan in the minds of the Muslims was very old, even in 1947, when it happened. And we also have to understand that the policy of recruitment for the Bharatiya Sena, followed by the British, was nothing short of being tilted towards the Muslims. For example, one of the policies of the British government was that the number of Punjabis appointed in a regiment would never exceed 200 and not more than 100 were to be Sikhs in them. Now, we all know that Sikhs are one of the most fierce Hindustanis when it came to fight for the nation for centuries. All of the fighting castes of India like Sikhs, Gurkhas, Dogras, Jats, Gadhwalis, Rajputs, they were practically excluded by the British just to keep the Bharatiya Sena weakened. If you look at the table of changes in the communal composition of the Indian Army in my book, you will realize that especially after 1919, there was a phenomenal rise in the strength of the Punjabi Muslims and Pathans, and it also shows a substantial reduction of the Sikhs from the first place to the third place. But the most intriguing thing about the military history of Bharat is that there was no information available ever on this point after 1930. It was impossible to know what was the proportion of Muslims in the Bharatiya army then. There was no government publication, and when asked for such an information, the government would deny to furnish it. Another example of the rift that the British kept on creating amongst the Hindustanis is Marathas of Brar, that is today's Central Bharat. They were recruited as a separate class. Other Hindus and Muslims who were recruited in the region were classified as Hindus and Muslims and were not covered under any denomination. This was called as the principle of class composition. In simple and straight words, you see the usual policy of the British: divide and rule. The British never recruited and maintained soldiers from those parts of the country which gave us the best soldiers. What the British wanted to achieve was to not give too great strength or prominence to any particular race or religious group. And this they were doing to ensure the safety of the empire, especially after the mutiny of 1857.
It was the first war of independence, Baba. It was not mutiny.
As I said, Tatya, the primary principle adopted by the British was that no one community was given predominance. But if we try to find out the reasons which led the British to allow absolute dominance of Muslims in the Bharatiya army, then we will get two explanations. One is that the Muslims proved to be better soldiers than the Hindus. And the other is because the British wanted to create counter force of the Hindu agitation. The British were always cunning enough to use the rift between Hindus and Muslims. And to use it successfully, they just ensured that the rift kept on growing. Still, two facts remain. During that period, the Bharatiya army was predominantly Muslim in its composition.
I completely agree to what you are saying, Baba. The British never failed to prove their conniving attitude and wickedness by applying the divide and rule policy everywhere. Baba, I also remember you using the term gatekeepers in this book.
Yes, I would like to just take ahead what I was saying in my answer to your previous question. The fact that the Muslims of the Punjab and the northwest frontier, being predominantly appointed by the British, had become so much known amongst those Muslims that they had started thinking that they were the sole defenders of Bharat from foreign invasions. So much so that they felt proud of being referred to as the gatekeepers of the nation. This was all plotted and positioned by the British. But in my book, which I wrote in 1940, I had actually warned the Hindus when I wrote that Hindus must consider this as a serious problem of the defense of Bharat in light of this crucial fact. Just tell me, Tatya, how far could the Hindus depend on these gatekeepers to hold the gate and protect the liberty and freedom of Hindustan?
Never.
Exactly. Let me explain this. It was very obvious that there were only two possible invaders to Bharat through this northwest border: Russia or Afghanistan. If the invasion came from Russia, it could have been hoped at least that these gatekeepers of Bharat would have behaved staunchly and loyally fought for the nation. But if the Afghans singly or in combination with other Muslim states would have marched on Hindustan, would these gatekeepers have stopped such invaders? Or would have opened the gates to the nation and let them in? I had warned in my book that this is one question that no Hindu could ignore. I also had said in the book clearly that realistically every Hindu must take a note of the fact that Muslims look upon Hindus as kafirs, and Muslims still do, irrespective of whether it is 1940 or 2023. But all the Muslims are of staunch opinion that all kafirs in the form of Hindus deserve only to be exterminated, killed. Also, it has been a long-lasting historical fact that Muslims always considered all Europeans as superior, but they look upon Hindus as inferior. Very little people know about one incident, Tatya. See, in 1919, the Bharatiya Muslims who were carrying on the Khilafat movement had actually stretched to the length of inviting the Amir of Afghanistan to invade India. People must understand the stand taken by and role played by the Muslim League. Let me make it clear here that if the shape of things to come then was not going to be different from what it was, the Hindus would find themselves between the devil and the deep sea. A straight question that I had asked the Hindus in the book was, what would be better for Hindus? Muslims staying out of Hindustan and act against Hindustan? Or Muslims staying within Hindustan and act against Hindustan? Let me tell you one thing, Tatya, honestly. See, the Hindus did not seem to realize at what disadvantage they were placed from the point of view of their defense, especially due to their exclusion from the army. The Pakistan area was main recruiting ground for the then Bharatiya army. But that same area contributed very little to the central exchequer. As against this, the rest of the Hindustan was the main contributor to the exchequer. To put it in simple words, the Pakistan provinces were a drain of the provinces of Hindustan, and not just this, in spite of being the least contributors to the central exchequer, they received a great deal from the central government. The central government revenue amounted to rupees 121 crores, out of which 52 crore rupees used to be sent annually on the army. An army which was Muslim in composition from the Pakistan area. The biggest joke was the bulk of the 52 crores were being contributed by the Hindu provinces, but they were excluded from the army appointments.
Baba, in all this, where was the Congress? I mean, the Indian National Congress.
I was just waiting for this question to come from you. To be blunt and frank, the role played by the Indian National Congress is the biggest chapter in this story. Congress is one entity which made this whole affair the most complicated. And to put it straight, they were the most intelligent and the shrewd lot. At the same time, their biggest problem was that for them, personal interests and benefits were always first before the nation, Bharat. Let's talk about this in our next episode.